I'm the healthiest. Everyone loves me.
Please, I've got potassium. I'm the energy booster.
Yeah, but I've got vitamin C. Can't beat that.
But I'm always on the teacher's desk.
At least I don't get stuck between people's teeth.
Yeah, well, I'm fresh and juicy.
Well, at least I don't get squeezed for juice.
So after you saved your Illustrator file, we can go to Adobe Animate, create a new file, and let's do 1080 by 1920, so it's vertical, and let's do 24 frames per second, and let's click create. So we can all have the same workspace. Let's go to Window, Workspaces, and let's select Basic, and you can reset the basic workspace as well. Click yes. So all have the same workspace. So before I import my Illustrator file into here, the main technique we're going to be using is frame switching. So I'm going to explain what frame switching is real quick. So I'm going to go to the brush tool, and then I'm going to increase my size to maybe 23, and let's maybe do a smiley face. So I'm going to do the eyes and then another layer for the mouth. So I'm going now to convert the mouth layer to a symbol. So what's a symbol? It's basically a folder. It's basically a group. So you can right click, or you can right click on your layer, and you can click convert layers to symbol, convert layers to a group or a folder, and you can just click OK. I'm gonna rename it to mouths. The type, you should choose graphic and press OK. So now we can double click to dive inside our folder, and we have the smile face. We can create different frames. Let's say I'm going to click insert blank keyframe and turn onion skin on, and let's maybe do a neutral face, a neutral mouth, and then I'm gonna insert another blank keyframe, and let's do maybe a sad mouth, and I'm gonna do one last blank keyframe, and then I'm going to do maybe an O face and turn onion skin off, and we can see we have 4 different frames. Then I'm going to go back, and now we have the eye layer and the mouth layer. So since we converted the mouth layer to a symbol, and we have different keyframes inside the symbol, we can change the symbol anytime in here. We can go to frame picker, and we will get this window, and we can choose any frame we would like. Okay, let's say maybe in this frame 1 I would like to have a smiley face, and then in frame I'm going to expand the eye layer, and then maybe in frame 10 I would like to have an O face, and then maybe in frame 20 let's insert a keyframe, maybe I would like to have a sad face. So we can see how it switches, but make sure you use single frame. So this is basically like cutout animation. We have different parts for different body parts. Anyways, I'm going to delete this. This was just to show you the technique we're going to be using. Okay, so I'm going to close this window. So now let's import our Illustrator file. So let's go and let's click and drag our Illustrator file into the artboard in here. And this is what we get. Artboard 1. We can collapse all the layers. So as you can see, we have all our Illustrator layers in here. And convert layers to, let's choose animate layers, and then make sure you have the same settings, and import. And basically we will get all the layers. Okay, very good. If your Adobe Animate crashes a lot, what you will need to do is you will need to go to Animate, and then let's go to Settings and Edit Preferences. And in Auto Recovery, I think the default is 10 minutes. You need to reduce it all the way to 1 minute. So it will save a recovery file every 1 minute. So this is good if your Adobe Animate crashes a lot. Let's press OK. Okay. Now what we need to do is convert each thing in a separate layer. So we have 3 different effects. So let's put these 3 different effects into one folder. So select these different effects and let's right click and convert layers to symbol. And make sure you select graphic and let's name this symbol to effects. And let's press OK. Let's do the same thing for the eyes. Let's click on eye 10, go all the way to eye 1 and hold shift and click. And right click, convert layers to symbol. And let's call this symbol eyes and press OK. Let's do the same thing for the mouths. Let's click on the last mouth, hold shift and click on the first mouth. Let's right click, convert layers to symbol, and let's call these mouths and press OK. Okay, now we have different symbols. We have the effects, we have the eyes, and we have the mouths. And it's always good practice to also turn your characters into symbols. So I'm gonna want to right click, convert to layers to symbol, and name this one orange. Why are we turning the characters into symbols? So that we can, when we create new scenes, we can import the characters into any scene we would like. Let's press OK. Click on the banana, convert it to a symbol. And finally for the apple. So the background, I think I'm going to delete the background since we don't really need it. So I'm going to click on the background, delete. At any point you can click on your artboard, go to properties and change the artboard color to any color you would like. Maybe I will do, let's see, maybe this color, maybe this blue color. Okay, now what we're going to do is dive into each symbol and separate the keyframes, because right now you see the effects keyframes, they're all showing up at the same time. So let's double click on the effects and let's just stack the keyframes into a single stack. So let me zoom out a little bit. So basically click and drag the second effect into the first track, click and drag all the keyframes so they're all stacking up on the same track. And we can delete these two since they don't have any keyframes. So now we have different effects in the same track. Since these are Illustrator files, at any point you can click on them and change the colors. So this time I want it to be brighter, so I'm going to go to Properties, Object, and choose a more bright yellow color. Maybe for the hearts, I'm going to choose more bright colors. Maybe this color. Alright, And maybe I'm gonna bring these a bit closer to the characters since they're a bit far. Alright, and now if I hide, let's actually, yep. So if I hide the eyes and the mouth, and maybe let's only show the eyeball, now I can choose different effects for the eyeball. So if I go to Properties, Object, and then Frame Picker, and let's take this window and dock it up here so it's easier to access. I can select any frame I would like. What if I don't want to have any effects? What should I do? It's very simple. I can just double click inside the symbol and create a blank keyframe. Now we have a blank keyframe without anything. I can go back and I have a blank keyframe. You can also create your own frames. You can click Insert Blank Keyframe and draw your own effects as well. You can maybe insert another blank keyframe. And another thing I want to show you is the Adobe Animate has a cool brush library set. So if we go to Windows and then we go to Brush Library, we have different library assets. Let's take this window and dock it up here. And we have different cool effects for brushes we can use. Maybe I want to use this brush. I'm going to click on it. These brushes only work with the normal brush tool. So it's not this one, it's not this one. It's hiding all the way up here. Let's click these three dots. And this is the tool we're going to be using, the paint brush tool. Let's click and drag it in here. And let's click anywhere to deselect. And now I can click and draw what I would like. To increase the brush stroke, we can increase it from here. And we can start drawing. So let's go to brush assets again. Let's click on the brush we would like to use and let's click on use in document and let's try it now. Very cool. Also, a cool shortcut that you should know is shift bracket or shift right bracket to increase the size or lower the size. So I can click shift left bracket to lower the size, and now we have a smaller brush. I can even go lower and we have smaller brush strokes. Okay, so these are good for painting different effects, so you can mess around with it and experiment. And now if we double click outside, we can exit the effects and then we can go back to frame picker and we can select the different effects that we've added. Okay, now let's do the same thing for the eyes and the mouths. So double click on the eyes symbol and let's stack them all into the same track. So you just need to click and drag on the keyframe and drop it besides the first track. So they're all on the same track. Click and drag, click and drag. And now we can just delete all these eye layers that we don't need. And now we have different eye shapes that we can use. let's go back, double click outside, and as you can see, we can choose different eye shapes. Let's do the same thing for the mouths. Let's double click on the mouth symbol. And let's just click and drag all the keyframes into the first track. And let's just delete all of these that we're not using, that they don't have any keyframes inside. Let's delete them. And then we have different mouth shapes. Let's double click to go back. And we can select any frame that we would like. Alright, now what we need to do is I want to create a shadow for the apple layer. So let's click and drag the apple layer here, and then let's create a new layer and let's call it apple underscore shadow. Let's maybe drag it and drop it below. Let's go to the circle, to the oval tool. Let's go to properties, and for the fill I'm going to use black. That's going to be like 40 or maybe 40% opacity. And stroke, I don't want any stroke, so I'm going to click on here to not do any stroke, and I'm going to click and drag to create a nice shadow. Okay, and then I would like to create a label in here. Maybe I will call this apple. So I'm going to create a new layer and call it apple label. I'm going to go to the text tool, and then maybe I'm going to click here and let's type apple. You can choose the font you would like. I'm going to choose Marvel Round. Okay, so that's it. Then you can go to the fill color and select what color you would like. I'm going to do maybe a dark blue color with 100% opacity. So alpha basically means opacity or transparency. And that's it. So you can press escape to exit, then you can press V to move your word. You can change the size from here. So if your limit is 96, that's fine. You can go to the free transform tool and make it bigger. It won't affect the quality because these are vectors. So I'm gonna put this over here. Okay, so now for the apple, we have an apple label. We have the apple shadow, the actual apple, the mouths, the eyes, and the effects. So it's super important you click on your apple and you change the pivot point to somewhere else. Because if I try to rotate it, it will rotate from the center, but we need to move the pivot point all the way down here so it rotates nicely. So I think that's all the layers we need for the apple. So now what we're going to do is just rename these to the mouth layer. For example, I'm going to name it to apple mouths. Double click on the eyes, let's call it apple eyes. Double click on the effects and let's call it apple effects. So it's super important to rename your layers so you know exactly which one is which. So we have, let's see, so apple layer, apple shadow, we have the actual apple, the mouths, the eyes, the effects. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so now let's do the same thing for our orange. Let's show the orange. Let's click and drag it all the way up. Let's maybe move it to the side. So if we look at our scripts, it's the apple talking first, and then the banana, and then the orange. So actually I'm going to do the banana second. So click on the banana layer, free transform. Let's move it to the side. And don't worry, we're gonna use a camera later to go from here to here to here. So the size doesn't matter at all. So let's click and drag the banana all the way here. And now we're going to duplicate the assets for the apple so we can have it for the banana. So we don't have to do it from scratch all over again. So I'm going to click on apple effects, apple eyes, mouths, and the shadow and the label. Right click, duplicate layer. And let's click and drag it. Yep, that should be fine actually. So now let's rename them accordingly. So I'm going to copy the banana text so we can have it in here. So let's call, so apple effects, let's rename it to banana effects. Apple eyes, let's call it banana eyes. And so on. So now we have the banana label, the shadow, the mouth, the eyes, the effects. Let's click and drag the banana between the mouths and the shadow. Okay, so now these layers are still here. So I'm just going to select all of these layers, all of the banana assets except the actual banana because we have already moved it. And then go to the free transform tool and let's click and drag it to the banana. So I'm going to position it right here. And then let's just position everything else. So the shadow I'm going to put in here. Maybe make it bigger. Put it right here. For the label, I'm going to click the label and put it above. And go to the text tool and let's rename this to, you can just delete everything except the first letter, and you can go back to the text tool and rename this to banana. Press escape, go to the selection, free transform tool, and let's center this. Okay, that's good. Now let's do the same thing for the orange. So I'm going to select all the banana layers except the banana itself. Right click, duplicate layers, and then let's take the orange and put it between the shadow and the mouth. Let's rename everything to orange. So I'm going to click on the banana label and change it to orange label. Okay, that's good. Now let's click on everything except the orange itself. And let's actually, I want to put the orange a bit further. So maybe right here. Then I'm going to select everything except the orange. And then I'm going to move it here. Okay, that's fine. Let's move the shadow, put it here, make it smaller. Let's take the text. Let's rename it to orange. Okay, so now let's click on our apple and see if I try to move it. It will, the mouth shapes and expressions won't move with it. So we need to parent it, but before you parent it, again a reminder to move the pivot point to the center bottom in here. So when you do a squash and stretch, it doesn't move from the bottom. So now let's parent the apple assets to the apple. So you need to click show parenting view. So if you don't have it, click show parenting view. And now you just click and drag the parenting to the apple. Click on the shadow, move the parenting whip tool to the actual apple. And let's do the same thing for all the other assets. So now all the apple effects, the apple eyes, mouth, shadow, label are all parented to the apple. So you should have something like this. It's basically like a rig. Imagine this is the hip and these are all the different body parts. So now if I try to move the apple, everything else moves with it. If I try to make it jump, it will jump. But I don't like how the shadow is parented to the apple, because if I try to move it, it won't. The shadow will move with the apple. So I'm going to remove the parent for the shadow. So you can click anywhere on the right side in here. Click remove parent. There we go. So you should parent everything except the apple shadow. Let's do the same thing for the banana. So I'm going to parent the banana to the banana label to the banana. The shadow, we're not going to parent it, we're going to parent the mouths, the eyes, the effects, and that's it. So you should have something like this. They're all connected to the banana layer. And finally let's do the same thing for the orange. Click and drag it in here. So you should have something like this. So now if I try to move the banana, everything should move with it. But again, super important to move the pivot point to the center bottom. Actually, you should move it to here, to where you would like it to scale from. Maybe a bit down here. Okay, that's good for me. Now I'm going to change the pivot point of the orange to here. Super important to do this. Alright, we're almost done. Let's create an audio layer. So let's click this and let's call it audio. And now you can navigate to your soundtrack and click on it. So make sure you're selecting the audio track first and you're on the first frame. Let's click and drag the audio track in here. And why it's not showing up? Because it's only one frame. We can hold Control on the frame and we can expand it.
I'm the health.
Alright. Make sure, if you can't hear your audio, make sure the sync is set to stream. Okay, before we expand all of these, we need to add one last thing, which is the subtitles. So let's call this subtitles. Click on the first frame, go to the text tool, and let's write something in here. These are just going to be the subtitles for our characters, just to fill out the empty space and add more things to look at. So let's go to paragraph, center this, and if you want to align it to the middle, you can go to Windows, and where's the align? Okay, Windows and then align, and then you'll get the align window. Let's click on here to align it. Make sure you have the free transform tool selected. Let's go back to the text tool and let's add a line break in here, and let's maybe make the text a bit smaller. And that should be it. Maybe it's too much, so I'm going to click on the fill and let's maybe choose a different color, a more subtle color. Maybe this color, not too flashy. Alright, and then the last layer we're going to add is the camera. So you don't need to add a new layer, you can just click on the camera tool. If you don't have the camera tool, you can click on these three dots, click on your camera and move it somewhere here, and click anywhere. So now you have the camera tool. Let's click on here, fit in window. So what is the camera tool? You can zoom in, zoom out however you would like. You can move it anywhere. If you don't want to see the objects outside the frame, you can just click on this button right here to clip content outside. Now we can zoom in, zoom out. So I don't want the subtitles to move with the camera, I want them to be stationary. So I'm going to go to the subtitles and click this button right here so that the camera is not affecting them. Now I can maybe zoom in, zoom out and do different camera movements. Alright, so I'm actually going to not mess with the camera for now. I'm just gonna go outside like here. So we have everything in frame. And then I'm gonna go back to the selection tool, and then I'm going to just leave the camera for now. So I think that's all we need so far. So we have the camera, the subtitles down here, the audio, the orange assets, the banana assets, the apple assets, and if you want to add a background, you can also add a background, but I'm just gonna do a blank color for now. So the last thing we need to do is just expand all the layers. So you can either click on your frame, hold Control and expand it like this, or something else you can do that's easier, you can go to the last frame. I want to maybe end it on frame 545. So what you're gonna do is click and drag to select all these keyframes right here. Then you're gonna insert frame, not insert keyframe, you want to just insert the frame, so you basically extend them without creating frames. So now we have all of our keyframes. So see how the audio ends in here?
At least I don't get squeezed for juice.
So you can even go further if you would like. If your audio gets cut off in here, You can maybe go to frame 600, click and drag to select all these frames and insert a keyframe in here. Okay, so now let's go back to the first frame. And do you see how the frames are the frames are switching? So this is easy to fix this. You just go let's go to the Apple mouse. Let's click on the first frame, go to frame picker. If you don't have this window, you can go back to properties, object, and then frame picker. Make sure instead of loop you want to select single frame, so only one frame is selected for the mouse. Okay, let's do the same thing for the eyes. Instead of loop, do single frame, and basically for all of them. So you can choose your own frame. Okay, that should be good for now. Now I can actually select only one thing for all of them. For the banana, let's maybe do a bored face and a sad mouth. Okay, so now the last thing we need to do is make multiple copies of our scene. Just in case we mess things up in this scene, we want to have a copy backup. So let's go to Windows. Let's go to Scene. Then we get the scene window up here. Oh, we don't even need to dock it. So we have scene 1. We can create a new scene so we can have an empty scene. Or what we can do is go back to scene 1 and we can duplicate this. So let's click on scene 1 and then let's click duplicate scene. And now we have two separate scenes. Notice how if I move things up in here, it will still be the same. So we have scene 1 and scene 2. This is good if you're like creating multiple frames and you want to have multiple stories but with the same characters. We can make as many duplications of this as we want, just in case we mess things up in one scene and we can't go back. And finally, just make sure to save up your work. So I'm gonna call this fruit battle setup. So we finished the scene setup now, and then in part 2 we're gonna learn how to animate everything to create a nice story.